The rain battered Detroit with a ferocity that felt personal, a torrential downpour, turning the city's cracked streets into muddy rivers, drowning the restless hum of a place teetering on collapse. Marcus Jackson, a 28-year-old black man, trudged through the deluge, his black hoodie soaked and clinging to his broad shoulders, drawstrings swaying with each heavy step. His life was a tapestry of struggle. Rent overdue by 2 weeks, his auto shop job hanging by a thread, and the streets of Detroit etching memories into his soul with the precision of a blade. As a black man in this city, he learned kindness was a rare commodity, something to hoard against the inevitable, not to give away lightly. But tonight, that lesson will be tested. A scream pierced the storm, raw and desperate, halting Marcus mid-step as the sound cut through the rain's relentless rhythm. His sneakers sank into a deep puddle, icy water seeping through to his socks, the cold biting at his toes and sending a shiver up his spine. Down a narrow alley, shadows clashed beneath the faint, flickering glow of a streetlight. One large and predatory, the other small, cowering against a rusted dumpster overflowing with debris. He could turn away. Should turn away. The last time he'd intervened, breaking up a bar fight on Mack Avenue, he'd walked away with a split lip and 6 humiliating hours in a cell, the cop's suspicion falling on him simply because of the color of his skin. The memory surged, his younger brother Jalen, 3 years ago, stumbling through their front door, his face swollen and bloodied from a beating, begging Marcus to help clear his name before the police hauled him off for a robbery he swore he didn't commit. Marcus had been too late to save Jalen from a 3-year prison sentence, and the guilt still gnawed at him like a persistent wound. The scream came again, weaker now, a fading cry swallowed by the rain, and something deep within, buried under years of survival, snapped like a taut wire. "Hey!" His voice erupted, a deep, resonant boom that sliced through the downpour, echoing off the damp brick walls of the alley. The larger shadow pivoted, a man in a soaked baseball cap, his switchblade glinting like a predator's fang in the dim light, his posture coiled with intent. The smaller figure was a girl, no older than 16, her braids plastered to her face with rain, clutching a tattered backpack as if it held her entire world. Marcus stepped closer, his hands raised in a gesture of peace, but his fists tensed, ready to strike, the muscles in his arms flexing under the wet fabric. "Leave her alone, man. You don't want this trouble," he warned, his voice steady despite the adrenaline beginning to surge. The guy let out a wet, mocking laugh, his lips curling into a sneer that revealed yellowed teeth, and lunged, the blade arcing toward Marcus's chest with lethal intent. Instinct took over, honed from years dodging fists, bottles, and worse in these unforgiving streets. Marcus twisted to the side, his reflexes sharp, seizing the wrist with a firm grip and slamming it against the rough brick wall with a dull thud. The knife clattered to the ground, disappearing into a puddle with a soft splash, but Cap Guy wasn't done. He swung a wild punch, his knuckles cracking against Marcus's jaw, sending a jolt of pain through him as blood flooded his mouth, the metallic taste sharp on his tongue. Marcus staggered, the impact blurring his vision for a moment, but he shoved back with all his strength, pinning the attacker against the wall, his breath hot and ragged against the man's ear. "Stay down," he growled, his voice low and dangerous, the weight of his resolve pressing down. A second shadow loomed from the darkness, bald guy, a hulking figure with a shaved head, gripping a crowbar with a menacing grin that stretched across his face. "You're dead, hero," he roared, swinging the metal toward Marcus's legs with brutal force, the motion a blur in the rain. Marcus released Cap Guy just in time, dodging the blow, but the crowbar grazed his thigh, tearing through the fabric of his jeans and leaving a searing sting that made him grit his teeth against the pain. He kicked out with his good leg, sending the crowbar skittering across the pavement with a metallic scrape that echoed like a gunshot. "Go!" he bellowed at the girl, his voice raw with urgency, the sound carrying over the rain. She froze, her wide eyes reflecting terror, then darted away, her backpack flapping wildly as she vanished into the storm. Cap Guy lunged again, a snarl twisting his face, but Marcus was ready. He caught the man's arm, twisting it hard until he heard a sickening pop, the man's howl of pain piercing the night air. Red and blue lights flooded the alley, tires screeching as cop cars jolted to a stop, their beams cutting through the rain. Marcus stepped back, hands high, palms out, his voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through his veins. "Officers, I didn't start this. I stopped it. He was attacking her. Check the cam across the street." They cuffed him anyway, the cold steel biting into his wrists as they forced him to his knees, their suspicion a familiar weight that pressed down on him like a physical force, a reminder of the prejudice he faced daily as a black man. Hours later, Marcus sat in a stark interrogation room, the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead like a swarm of angry bees, casting harsh shadows on the cracked walls. His clothes were still sodden, clinging to his skin, the bruise on his jaw pulsing with every heartbeat, a dull ache that matched the rhythm of his exhaustion. Blood crusted at the corner of his mouth, and his thigh throbbed where the crowbar had grazed him, the skin tender under his torn jeans. He'd save her, but at what cost? His job at the auto shop wouldn't wait for a court appearance, and his mom would break down when she learned he'd been dragged in again. This wasn't new territory, trapped by the very act of doing right, a cycle he'd endured too many times in a city that punished black heroes as quickly as it did villains. The door creaked open, and a grizzled cop with graying hair and weary eyes tossed a file onto the table with a thud. Girl came forward. "Says you're the hero. Security cam from the liquor store across the street backs it. You're free to go." Marcus let out a shaky breath, the knot in his chest loosening just enough to let air fill his lungs, a small victory against the tension that had gripped him. He stepped into the gray dawn, the rain easing to a gentle drizzle, the city waking around him with the groan of buses and the chatter of early workers heading to their shifts. At the precinct steps, the girl waited, her patched backpack slung over one shoulder, her braids dripping onto the cracked concrete. She handed him a soggy, folded note, her fingers trembling slightly as she extended it. "Thank you. My name's Aisha. You didn't have to, but you did." Her voice was soft, almost lost in the morning air, but her eyes carried a gratitude that struck him deeper than the punch had, a quiet sincerity that pierced through the cold that had settled into his bones. He tucked the note into his pocket, a flicker of warmth sparking in his chest as he nodded to her, unable to find the words to respond. Home was 6 blocks away, a dilapidated 2-bedroom on the east side, where the paint peeled in jagged strips like old scars and the furnace groaned like a dying beast, its heat barely enough to keep the chill at bay. His mom, Denise, sat at the kitchen table, a cigarette smoldering between her fingers, the air thick with the scent of burnt coffee and her lavender lotion. A nurse at 52, her face was a map of lines carved by years of raising 2 black boys alone. One lost her prison cell, the other teetering on the edge of survival in a world that often judged them by their skin. She glanced up from her crossword puzzle, her sharp eyes locking onto the bruise blooming on his jaw and the blood crusted at his lip. "What happened, Marcus?" she asked, her voice a mix of concern and exasperation, the tone of a mother who'd seen too much trouble in her time. "Stopped a guy from hurting a kid," he said, kicking off his sodden sneakers with a squelch, the wet rubber leaving a trail on the linoleum floor. "Cops thought I was the troublemaker till she vouched for me." Denise stubbed out the cigarette, the ember hissing against the rim of a chipped mug. "You're dumb as hell, boy. What if she didn't show up? What they shot first, huh? I can't bury another son. Jalen's enough to haunt me." Her voice cracked, the memory of her youngest son raw and painful, a wound that hadn't healed. Marcus saw the image flash in his mind. Jalen, 3 years ago, his face swollen from a beating, begging Marcus to help clear his name before the cops hauled him away for a robbery he didn't commit. Marcus had been too late then, and the guilt still burned, a constant ember in his chest. "I couldn't walk away, Ma." She looked like Jalen that night, scared, alone, needing someone. His voice softened, heavy with the weight of that failure, the memory of his brother's pleading eyes still vivid. Denise's expression softened at Jalen's name, the lines around her eyes deepening with emotion, but her tone stayed firm. This city don't hand out medals for good deeds. It chews you up and spits you out broken. Be careful, Marcus. She turned back to her puzzle, but her hands trembled slightly, betraying the fear she held for her son in a world that too often turned against him. Sleep came in fits. Marcus's dreams haunted by the alley shadows, Aisha's terrified face, and the cold bite of handcuffs against his wrists, a reminder of the prejudice he'd faced. By noon, he dragged himself to the auto shop, a cramped garage where the air reeked of oil and the clatter of tools filled the silence like a chaotic symphony. Rico, his wiry Puerto Rican boss with a temper as short as his patience, barely glanced up from the engine he was dissecting, his hands smeared with grease. "You're late again, Jackson. Mrs. Henderson's Toyota needs a new alternator by 5. Get on it," he growled, his voice rough with irritation. "Rough night," Marcus muttered, grabbing his toolbox from the cluttered bench, the metal tools clinking softly as he set them down. He threw himself into the work, the familiar rhythm of wrench on metal usually a refuge, a way to quiet his mind and push back the ghosts of the night before. Today, it offered no peace. His thoughts churned. Aisha's note, a quiet pulse in his pocket, her gratitude a weight he couldn't shake, a reminder of the risk he'd taken and the life he'd chosen to protect. At 3, the shop phone shrilled, cutting through the din of clanging metal and the low hum of a radio playing in the background. Rico hollered over the noise. "Marcus, some girl's asking for you. Marcus." Aisha's voice trembled through the line, fragile and urgent, each word laced with panic that sent a chill down his spine and set his heart racing. "He's back. The guy found me at the shelter. He's threatening to kill me for running, for telling. I'm at the library on Greshit. Please come." He dropped his gloves, his heart sinking like a stone in his chest, the weight of her fear pulling him back into the fray despite the risks. "I gotta go," he told Rico, who shot back. "Walk out now, and don't expect your spot tomorrow." Marcus didn't hesitate. He ran, a mile through the damp, gray streets, his breath coming in ragged bursts by the time he reached the library, his bruised jaw throbbing with each step, the cold air stinging his lungs and reminding him of the fight ahead. Aisha huddled under the library awning, her braids dripping with rain, her eyes darting like those of a cornered deer, scanning the street for any sign of danger. "He was outside the shelter," she said, her voice quivering, barely above a whisper, her hands clutching her backpack so tightly her knuckles whitened against the worn fabric. "Said he'd kill me for running away, for telling someone. I didn't know where else to go." "You sure it was him?" Marcus asked, scanning the street himself, his gut tightening with every passing car, every shadow that moved in the fading light, his instincts on high alert. "His cap. I know it anywhere." She clutched her backpack tighter, her voice breaking with fear and guilt. "I didn't mean to drag you back into this. I'm sorry. Ain't your fault," he said, his tone firm but gentle, trying to steady her trembling frame with the calm authority of a man who'd seen too much. "What's he after? Tell me everything." "A necklace," she whispered, her fingers tightening on the straps of her backpack, as if it were a lifeline. "Gold with a cross. My mom's. I pawned some earrings to buy food, but I kept this. It's all I have left of her. He must have seen me with it at the pawn shop." Before he could dig deeper, the library doors swung open with a groan that echoed in the quiet space, the sound sharp and ominous in the stillness. Cap Guy strode in, his switchblade gleaming in the dim light of the library's fluorescent bulbs, his eyes sweeping the room like a hawk searching for prey, his presence a threat that filled the air. "Stay calm," Marcus whispered, pulling Aisha toward the back exit, his hand steady on her shoulder, guiding her through the stacks of books with a quiet urgency. They slipped into the alley, but a Chevy idled at the far end, bald guy stepping out with a crowbar, his grin menacing, his eyes glinting with malice. They were trapped, the narrow space closing in like a vice, the walls seeming to press closer with every second. "Let her go. She's just a kid," Marcus shouted, stepping forward to shield Aisha, his heart hammering in his chest, the beat loud in his ears as he faced the threat head-on. Bald guy laughed, a harsh bark that echoed off the alley walls, tapping the crowbar against his palm with a rhythmic thud that sent a shiver down Marcus's spine. That bag's got more than pictures. Jewelry's ours. We saw her pawn some last week. Hand it over, or I'll crack your skull open like a walnut, he sneered, his voice thick with menace. Marcus pushed Aisha behind him, his pulse racing, every muscle tense for a fight, his body a shield against the danger. Cap Guy lunged, the knife slashing toward his ribs with deadly precision, the blade catching the light as it moved through the air. Marcus dodged, years of street savvy guiding his movements, and landed a solid right hook to the guy's chin, sending him staggering back, blood spraying from his split lip in a crimson arc that stained the wet pavement. Bald Guy swung the crowbar, a heavy arc aimed at Marcus's head, but Marcus grabbed a trash can lid from the ground. The metal dented and rusted, blocking the blow with a resounding clang that reverberated through the alley. He kicked the weapon free, the crowbar skittering across the pavement with a metallic scrape that sounded like a gunshot in the confined space. "Run!" he shouted, his voice raw with desperation, the sound carrying over the rain. Aisha bolted, splashing through puddles, her breath hitching in sobs as she fled towards safety. Marcus followed, but Cap Guy tackled him from behind, the knife grazing his arm as they hit the ground, the impact jarring his already bruised body and sending a fresh wave of pain through him. Blood trickled down his sleeve in a warm, sticky stream, but he drove a knee into the guy's gut, breaking free with a grunt of effort, his strength as a black man forged in adversity shining through. He staggered after Aisha, the Chevy's tires squealing as Bald Guy peeled out in pursuit, the roar of the engine fading into the distance as they ducked into a side street, their breaths visible in the cold air. They crouched in the shadows of the side street, Marcus panting, pressing his sleeve to the cut on his arm, wincing at the sting as the fabric soaked up the blood, the wound a testament to his fight. "I'm sorry," Aisha sobbed, tears mixing with the rain on her face, her voice trembling with guilt and fear. "I didn't tell you everything about the necklace. There's a boss. He wants it bad, and he won't stop." "Who?" Marcus asked, his voice steady despite the pain, his eyes searching hers for answers, trying to piece together the puzzle with the clarity of a man who'd survived worse. "I don't know his name, but my mom worked at Gold Star Pawn on Jefferson before she died of cancer when I was 8. She always said the necklace was protection. I never understood until now. Maybe it's tied to her past, something she couldn't escape," she said, her voice breaking with the weight of the revelation. "That's our next move," he said, determination hardening his resolve, though his arm throbbed with every movement, a reminder of the stakes. They trekked through the city, the neon lights of Jefferson Avenue, flickering in the dusk, casting eerie shadows on the wet pavement that reflected their hurried steps. The pawn shop, Gold Star, stood squat and weathered, its sign buzzing faintly, the glass doors smudged with years of fingerprints. Marcus knocked, the sound sharp in the quiet evening. Eddie, a wiry old man with a gray beard and tired eyes, cracked the door open. "We're closed," he grumbled, his voice rough with age, but his eyes widened as they landed on Aisha, recognition flashing across his weathered face. "We need answers," Marcus said, rolling up his sleeve to reveal the blood-streaked cut, the red stark against his dark skin. "Gold cross necklace. Her mom's." Eddie's gaze softened, a flicker of memory passing through his eyes. "Lena's girl. I knew your mom. Sharp as a tack, tough as nails. That necklace, she took it from a King's guy years back, said it was payment for a debt they forced on her. But it's more. It's got a map inside, etched into the gold, leading to their hidden stash. Darnell King runs the Kings now. Ruthless bastard. If he wants it, he'd kill to get it back. I should know. I used to run with him before I got out, paid my dues with blood," he confessed, his voice heavy with the weight of his past. "A map." Aisha's voice shook, her hand clutching the necklace through her shirt, her fingers trembling with the realization of its value. "At Water Docks," Eddie said, his tone grave. "That's where they'll be. But you're crazy to go there, son. Darnell don't play fair." We've got no choice. Outside, Marcus dialed Denise, his fingers trembling slightly from the cold and the adrenaline still coursing through his veins. "Ma, call Detective Harris. Tell him Darnell King's crew is after a kid over a necklace, Atwater Docks. Hurry." Denise cursed under her breath, but agreed, her voice tight with worry. "Be careful, Marcus. I can't lose you two." Marcus turned to Aisha, his expression resolute, the strength of his black heritage fueling his resolve. "We bail him out. Let the cops handle the rest." The dock stretched out like a graveyard of rusted containers, the river's brackish stench hanging heavy in the air, the water lapping darkly against the pier with a rhythmic slap. The warehouse loomed ahead, its windows glowing with a sinister light, the faint hum of voices inside carrying on the wind, a promise of danger. Aisha's hand trembled as she held up the gold cross necklace, its gleam catching the dim streetlight, the weight of its secret pressing down on her. Cap Guy's shout cut through the silence, sharp and furious, and three figures emerged: Bald Guy, a wiry kid with a flashlight, and Darnell King, his scarred face twisted in rage, a pistol gleaming in his hand. "You're dead, girl. That necklace has a map to my money. Your mom stole it, and I'll bury you both for it," he snarled, his voice a growl that sent a chill down Marcus's spine. "Run!" Marcus yanked Aisha into a sprint, his boots splashing through puddles, his arms screaming with pain as blood seeped through his sleeve, the wound a burning reminder of the fight. They zigzagged between crates, Aisha's breath hitching in sobs, the sound of their pursuers' footsteps pounding closer, a relentless drumbeat in the night. Bullets pinged off metal, one grazing Marcus's shoulder, the sharp sting making him stumble as blood soaked his hoodie, the crimson stark against the black fabric. He shoved Aisha behind a stack of containers, his heart pounding so hard he thought it might burst, his vision swimming from the pain and blood loss, but his resolve unbroken. Darnell closed in, gun raised, his scarred face illuminated by the flashlight's beam. "You can't run forever," he snarled, his finger tightening on the trigger, the barrel glinting with intent. Marcus lunged, tackling Darnell to the ground with the force of a man driven by justice, the gun skittering across the pavement with a clatter that echoed in the night. They grappled, Darnell's fist slamming into Marcus's ribs, the pain exploding through him like a firework, his breath hitching as he fought to stay conscious, his black strength a beacon in the darkness. Marcus gasped but landed a knee to Darnell's gut, forcing a grunt from the man, his own blood dripping onto the concrete. "Stay down," he growled, pinning him for a moment, his muscles straining. Aisha screamed as Bald Guy grabbed her, his meaty hand yanking at her backpack, but Marcus staggered up, blood streaming down his arm, his vision blurring. Aisha snatched a jagged rock from the ground, hurling it at Darnell's head with a cry of defiance. The rock struck true, stunning him, blood trickling down his temple as he slumped. Sirens wailed, growing louder, and cop cars screeched onto the scene, their lights blinding the night. Officers swarmed, tackling Darnell as Marcus leaned against a crate, battered but standing, his chest heaving with each breath, a testament to his resilience as a black hero. At the precinct, Detective Harris, a stocky black man with tired eyes that held a quiet understanding, took their statements in a cramped room that smelled of stale coffee and sweat. "Lucky and stupid," he said, eyeing Marcus's bloodied arm and the bruises blooming across his dark skin, a mark of his courage. "But you got him. The necklace's map leads to the king's hidden cache, enough to tie them to a murder case. They're done for good." He handed Aisha the necklace back, now in a clear bag, its gold cross gleaming under the harsh lights. "Your mom hid it well. It's yours now, a piece of her strength." Aisha's eyes filled with tears, but she nodded, clutching the bag close, her fingers tracing the cross through the plastic. She opened the pendant, revealing a tiny, etched map hidden inside the gold, a secret her mother had died to protect, a legacy of resilience. Denise burst through the door, her scrubs wrinkled from a night shift, pulling Marcus into a fierce hug, her hands trembling with relief. "Dumb as hell, "But I'm proud of you, boy," she whispered, tears glistening in her eyes as she held him tight, her voice a mix of love and fear for her black son. "You're a hero, even if I hate seeing you hurt." Dawn broke over Detroit, painting the city in soft gold. The rain finally gone, leaving a crisp clarity in the air that felt like a new beginning. Aisha stepped close, her voice steady despite the exhaustion in her eyes. "You didn't have to, but you did. Thank you. For me, for my mom," she said, her gratitude a quiet strength. "Worth it," Marcus said, managing a weary smile, the pain in his arm and ribs a badge of what he'd fought for, a testament to his choice as a black man to stand against injustice. That afternoon, Rico called, his gruff voice surprisingly warm. "Heard what you did, Jackson. Job's safe. Get back tomorrow." Marcus exhaled, relief washing over him like a wave, a small victory in a life of struggle. With the money from the king's stash, uncovered by the map, he hired a lawyer for Jalen, uncovering new evidence that proved his brother's innocence, a wrongful conviction rooted in the same prejudice Marcus faced. Weeks later, Jalen walked free, tears streaming down his face as he embraced Marcus and Denise on their porch, the city stretching out below them in the morning light, a symbol of their resilience. Aisha joined them, her foster family supportive, her new school a fresh start. She wore the necklace openly now, the gold cross a symbol of her mother's love and their shared victory, a mark of the family they'd become. They stood together, Marcus, Denise, Jalen, and Aisha, a family forged through kindness and the unyielding strength of a black man's courage, the city humming with life below. For the first time in years, Marcus felt a flicker of hope, a quiet promise that the weight of kindness could lift as much as it pressed, a beacon for his community. Lessons learned from a story. The story of Marcus Jackson and the weight of kindness offers several powerful lessons for readers. First, it shows the transformative power of kindness, even in the face of adversity. Marcus, a black man in a tough Detroit neighborhood, risked his life to save Aisha, a young girl, despite the personal costs, physical injury, job risks, and police suspicion. This teaches us that acts of compassion can change lives, even when the world seems stacked against you. Second, the story highlights resilience against systemic challenges. Marcus faces prejudice as a black man, yet he rises above it, proving that inner strength can overcome external barriers. Finally, it underscores the importance of family and community. Marcus's fight to free his brother Jalen and his bond with Aisha and Denise show that standing by loved ones can forge unbreakable ties, offering hope in the darkest times. Meaningful message conveyed. The core message of The Weight of Kindness is that kindness, though costly, is a powerful force for good that can break cycles of violence and despair. Marcus's decision to help Aisha, despite the danger, not only saves her, but also dismantles a criminal operation, frees his brother, and builds a new family. The story also sheds light on the systemic struggles faced by black individuals in America: racial profiling, wrongful convictions, and economic hardship, while celebrating their strength and heroism. It's a call to recognize the humanity in others and to act with courage, even when the odds are against you. Ultimately, the message is one of hope. Small acts of bravery can ripple out to create lasting change, proving that goodness can triumph in a harsh world. Personal perspective from a story. As a storyteller, I'm deeply moved by Marcus's journey in The Weight of Kindness. His story resonates with me because it reflects the real struggles of many black Americans who face daily challenges, yet find the strength to do what's right. Marcus's courage reminds me of the quiet heroes in our own lives, those who stand up for others despite the risks, often without recognition. I admire how he turns his pain, especially the guilt over Jalen's wrongful conviction, into a driving force for justice. The necklace's hidden map feels like a metaphor for hidden potential. We all carry something valuable within us that can lead to unexpected victories. This story inspires me to believe in the power of community and the resilience of the human spirit, especially in marginalized groups who continue to fight for a better future against all odds. If you were touched by Marcus and Aisha's journey in the weight of kindness, don't miss out on more inspiring stories like this. Head over to Story Precious on YouTube, where we share the latest videos that dive into the heart of human struggles, triumphs, and lessons. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss an update. Each story is crafted to uplift and inspire. Join our growing community today, and let's explore the power of storytelling together on Story Precious.